Men from Mars. There was no floating inside the space hotel. The gravity-making machine saw to that. So once the docking had been triumphantly achieved, Mr. Wonka, Charlie, Grandpa Joe, and Mr. and Mrs. Bucket were able to walk out of the great glass elevator into the lobby. As for the grandparents, none of them had their feet on the ground for over 20 years, and they certainly weren't going to change their habits now. So when the floating stopped, they all three plopped right back into the bed and insisted staying in the bed. Charlie gazed around the huge lobby. On the floor there was a thick green carpet. 20 tremendous chandeliers hung shimmering from the ceiling. The walls were covered with valuable pictures, and there were big soft armchairs all over the place. At the far end of the room there were the doors of 5 lifts. The group stared in silence at all this luxury. Nobody dared to speak. Mr. Wonka had warned them that every word they uttered would be picked up by Space Control in Houston, so they better be careful. A faint humming noise came from somewhere below the floor, but that only made the silence more spooky. Charlie took hold of Grandpa Joe's hand and held it very tight. He wasn't sure he liked this very much. Mr. Wonka was writing on a little pad. He held up the pad. It said, "Anybody hungry?" The old ones in the bed began waving their arms and nodding and opening and shutting their mouths. Mr. Wonka turned the paper over. On the other side, it read, The kitchens of this hotel are loaded with food." Suddenly, a tremendous booming voice came upon the loudspeaker. "Attention!" boomed the voice, and Charlie jumped. So did Grandpa Joe. Everybody jumped, even Mr. Wonka. "Attention, the 8 foreign astronauts. This is Space Control in Houston, Texas, USA. You are trespassing on American property. You are ordered to identify yourselves immediately. Speak now." "Shh! Who are you?" boomed the voice. "I repeat, who are you?" But no reply came. "Speak!" boomed the voice, getting louder. "Speak! Speak! Speak!" Grandma Georgina shot under the sheet. Grandma Josephine stuck her fingers in her ears. Grandma George buried his head in the pillow. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket, both petrified, were once again in each other's arms. Charlie was clutching Grandpa Joe's hand, and the two of them were staring at Mr. Wonka and begging him with their eyes to do something. Mr. Wonka stood very still, and although his face looked calm, you can be quite sure his clever, innovative brain was spinning like a dynamo. "This is your last chance. We are asking you, who are you? Reply immediately. If you do not reply, we shall be forced to regard you as dangerous enemies. We shall then press the emergency freezer switch, and the temperature in the space hotel will drop into minus 100 degrees centigrade. All of you will instantly become deep frozen. You have 15 seconds to speak." 1, 2, 3. "Grandpa, we have to do something." 6, 7, 8, 9. All of a sudden, Mr. Wonka started twirling around. He sprang to life. He skipped a few spaces across the floor, and then a frenzied, unearthly sort of scream, he cried, "Bimbo feast!" The loudspeaker stopped counting. There was silence. All over the world there was silence. Charlie's eye was riveted on Mr. Wonka. He was going to speak again. "Bingo bunny, Daffy Dooney, you be loony." Again the silence. And this time the tone was much quieter, but there was a touch of steel in every syllable. "Karasuku malabuku, we be wise and you be cuckoo. Alapanda kakamanda, pants for dun if no suspenda. Fuikwika kanderika, we be stronga, you be weaka. Pop kota bomber copa, very risky you provoca. Fanfafisha minis Mars." The effect of all this on the world was electric. In the control room in Houston, in the White House in Washington, and palaces and city buildings and mountain shacks from America to China and Peru, everyone was asking, "Who are they? What language is that? Where do they come from?" In the president's study, Vice President Mrs. Tibbs, the members of the cabinet, and the Schwarzwalder, they were very much afraid. But the president himself came a cool and clear brain. "Nanny, oh nanny, what on earth do we do? I'll get you a nice warm glass of milk." "I hate this stuff. Please don't make me drink it." "Well, some of the chief interpreter." Right here, Mr. President, said the chief interpreter. What language was that? Was it Eskimo? No, Eskimo. Ha, then it was Tagalog. Either Tagalog or Ugro. Not Tagalog, Mr. President. And I'm quite sure it was not Tungus or Tupi. Do not stand there telling him what it wasn't, you idiot. Tell him what it was, said Miss Tibbs. Yes, ma'am, Miss Vice President, ma'am, said the chief interpreter, beginning to shake. Believe me, it is not a language I have ever heard before. But I thought you knew every language in the world. I do, Mr. President. Oh, don't lie to me, you silly man. How can you possibly know every language in the world when you didn't know this one? It is not a language of this world. Nonsense, man, barked Mrs. Tibbs. I understood some of it myself. These people have obviously tried to learn just a few of our easier words, but the rest is a language that has never been heard before on this earth. Screaming scorpions, cried the president. You mean they could be coming from somewhere else? Precisely. Like where? Who knows, said the chief interpreter. But did you notice, Mr. President, how they used the words Venus and Mars? Of course I noticed it. But what does that have to do with anything? Aha! I see what you're driving at. Oh, good gracious me. Men from Mars and Venus, said the chief interpreter. That right there could make for trouble. I'll say it could, said the chief interpreter. He wasn't talking to you. What do we do now, General? Blow him up, cried the general. You're always trying to blow things up. Can't you think of something else? I like blowing things up. Don't be a fool, said Miss Tibbs. If you blow these people up, Mars will declare war on us. I'll take 'em on, shouted the chief of the army. Shut up, snapped Miss Tibbs. You're fired. Hooray, said all the other generals. Well done, Miss Vice President, madam. Miss Tibbs said, We've got to treat these fellows gently. The one who spoke right now just sounded extremely cross. We've got to be polite to them. The last thing we do is to be invaded by men from Mars. You got to talk to them, Mr. President. Tell Houston we want another direct radio link with the Space Hotel. And hurry.